On this video, we are fixing HDR gaming on the PC forever. We are fixing everything. SDR, HDR, native HDR, non-supported HDR games, auto HDR from Windows 11, everything. And credit to this video goes to the YouTube channel called Joba Must Die. When I made this video, huge new discovery for HDR gaming on PC, I have this YouTube user called Joba Must Die making a big comment and explaining a lot. And then on the Spider-Man video, he also explained a lot of information. So we communicate, and I was able to speak with him, and he explained me everything. So he basically, now I understand why this is happening and why this is such a big deal. And by the way, what this means, this is not something offensive. This Java means like games that are brainless, that just push a button and just stop doing those brainless games that have no meaning. That's what it means. So he has a YouTube channel. So I'm going to explain you everything so you understand what's going on. And I'm gonna give you the settings right now from the beginning. So for people that are like, bro, just give me the setting, I trust you. Because this is not gonna be a short explanation, okay? So if you just want the settings, if you just want, I just want one setting and to set and forget, I don't want to mess around with settings anymore, give me that. And this is going to look so good that you're probably gonna want to just forget and just play every game like that. But I would recommend you to listen to the explanation, because this is not going to apply always, okay? It's going to apply most of the time, and with the explanation I'm gonna give you, you are going to be able to figure out the solution for any case and understand how to fix HDR gaming, SDR, everything. But I'm going to start by giving you the settings. So the settings are the NVIDIA control panel on full range, so RGB full range. You force limited on the TV, and that is for SDR content. Now, if you turn on HDR on Windows and you max out the HDR brightness slider, that SDR HDR brightness slider, if you max that out and you have the HDR turned on Windows, we now have to limit again the black level. So what we're going to do is we are going to set these fine-tuned dark areas to -11 and the screen brightness to 49. And why? That's what I'm going to explain you here, so you understand why I'm doing this, why it makes sense, why this is going to apply in most of the cases, to not say all of them. So this is a setting that you can use. You basically turn off HDR from the game, you open every single game on SDR, but you have Windows HDR on, so you are on HDR on the TV, and this is going to give you perfect HDR for every single game, because all games are on SDR. That's it. That's one setting that's gonna fix most of the problem. But you want to understand what I'm going to explain you, because you definitely want to use native HDR from the games every single time that is possible, because it is supposed to give you better colors with a wider color gamut, and it is supposed to give you more information for the highlights, to have more fine details on specular highlights. So why this is the case, why this is the problem. So I'm going to be talking about range. So I have to start by explaining you what I mean. What is range? What is from 0 to 255? What is that? I am going for simplification purposes on this video, I am going to ignore the wider and the bigger HDR range. For simplification purposes, I am only going to talk about 0 to 255, which is going to be 8 bits, okay? It's like on your physics class, the professor tells you, we're just going to ignore gravity for a moment. And you are like, what? We're going to ignore gravity? Yeah, they do that in physics all the time for simplification purposes. So we're going to take that 10 bits out of the conversation because it makes the problem more difficult to understand. So 8 bits. So you know a bit is either 0 or 1. So if you have 8 of those, you have 2 possibilities on each bit. So that is 2 to the power of 8. So 2 to the power of 8, so that means 2 by 2 by 2 by 2, 8 times. That gives you 256. So you have from 0 to 255 bits. So you have red, green, and blue. So each of those primaries can be from 0 to 255 possibilities, and they can combine together to give you the grayscale. So that grayscale is from perfect black, which is the 0, to that whitest white, which is 255. So we need to also understand what means on the NVIDIA control panel full, and what means on the TV full range, and what means on the NVIDIA control panel on the GPU, if you have an AMD, what means limited, and what means limited on the TV. So what it means is full means don't do anything. So full on the GPU is basically, okay, we're just going to throw that to the TV or to the display as it is. And full on the TV means, okay, the signal is in full, we don't have to do anything, just display it as it is. Limited on the GPU means compress the signal, compress the information. And limited on the TV means decompress that information. So basically we are telling the TV, or the TV is unlimited, we are telling, okay, the signal is coming, the signal that's coming is unlimited range, so we need to expand that signal so we can display the full range on the TV. Now, if we have on the NVIDIA control panel full, and we force on the TV limited range, what's happening is that full signal is now being expanded. And why would you want to do that? Because it just turns out that most games on SDR, so I'm talking about SDR, have their information inside that limited range. So if we have the case on SDR, I'm going to start talking about SDR, then I'm going to go to native HDR, and then I'm going to go to SDR inside the HDR from Windows, okay? So SDR. If we have a game that has all the information and it was mastered, it was color graded, however you want to call that, the developers work from 0 to 255, no problem. Full on the GPU, full on the TV, perfect image, there's nothing washed out, it looks amazing. That's not the case most of the time. It seems like the problem is the consoles. The developers, they do the games for the consoles might be unlimited, so they make the games to look good on the console, but then because the PC is gonna be full, they have to slap this information that is from 0 to 16 that just washes out the picture, okay? And also from 235 to 255. So if the game information is from 16 to 235, which is that limited range, and we have additional information that we don't want, what we want to do is set on the GPU full range, and on the TV, so that means don't do anything with the signal, okay? And now we're telling the TV, no, actually the information is unlimited. So the TV grabs this full signal, and this is the game information, and the TV does this and expands that signal. So we can see that game information, which is limited, and we see that on the TV. And the result is that we get rid of that washed out image. We get rid of that black level race and that grayscale race. So not only that, I'm going to explain you the consequence, especially for HDR, okay? It's also gonna happen for SDR, so the highlights are also gonna be brighter on SDR. Although, you know, there's no highlights on SDR, but you know what I mean. The bright objects are also going to be a little bit brighter. So that is SDR. Most of the games, to not say all of them, they are designed for the console, so probably they are limited. Okay, there are going to be some games that they are going to be full, and you just use full on the GPU, full on the TV, and we can talk about how to identify. I'm gonna tell you how to identify that at the end after I give you all the examples. So that is SDR gaming. Okay, so for SDR gaming, the settings would be full on the GPU, limited on the TV, and you're done. Okay, that's done. So just default fine-tune dark area 0 and your brightness on 50. No, you don't have to do anything with the black level, unless there's a specific example of a game that you have to lower the black level a little bit. That can always happen, but is strange. That's SDR. So now let's go to native HDR. Okay, native HDR, ST2084, EOTF, all of that, most of the time the same applies. The HDR signal, the color grading, the work that the developers they make is limited. Why? Probably because of the console, probably because the standard for ST2084 is limited. I've seen some people say that ST2100, I think it is full, or it can be limited, but ST2084, which is what we're working with here, is probably limited, or maybe it's because of the consoles, maybe it's because of the same reason. So the same applies for native HDR. We have a full signal trying to be displayed, and really the information is limited. So we do the same, full on the GPU, limited on the TV, so we can see the real thing. That's going to be the case in most of the time. So the same applies, same as on SDR content. Now we have a third possibility, which is what I have here right now with Cyberpunk. I open the game is on SDR right now, okay? So the game is on SDR, but I have Windows HDR on, and I have the Windows SDR HDR slider max out, okay? So what is happening when you turn on HDR on Windows, we have the desktop information is actually on SDR. So we have the information on limited inside that full container, okay? So the SDR information on Windows is unlimited, but because we turn on HDR, we need to be on the full range. Windows needs to be on the full range because it is expecting that if you play a game on HDR, that HDR game is gonna be in full range, okay? So in that way, the desktop is in full. You open the game is full. If the game was mastered on the full range on HDR, you can see it. That's why it has to be in that way. It is not that broken. That's just by design, okay? So now the problem is all the SDR content on Windows is going to look washed out. All the SDR content. So because we have this full image. So the solution again is GPU on full range, then force limited on the TV. So the TV is going to expand that signal so we can see the SDR information inside Windows. But here's the problem when we play a game. Now we have that SDR signal because we limit on the TV, but the problem is the game information is actually limited inside that, because like I explained at the beginning with SDR content, we have this SDR content that actually is limited. So the game information most of the time is limited, it's not full range. So on Windows, when we have HDR on, we have this full information. The SDR information is going to be limited, so we need to expand it on the TV. But now the game information is gonna be limited. So we would need a second expansion. So how can we do double limited? And actually, we don't want to do that. We want to play the games. We don't want to expand the white part. We only want to expand the black part. And the reason is, by limiting one time on the TV, we are in expanding that range. What the consequence is that max CLL 530, which is the HDR metadata that the content is calling for. So max CLL 530 means the content is trying to output that maximum peak brightness. Okay, so when we expand that full signal, what happens is that now that max CLL 530 nits is going to give you on the TV 800 nits. So on full range, you need max CLL 797 for the TV to output 800 nits. But when we expand that, now 530 is going to call for the maximum peak brightness of the TV. So imagine this. In full range, we need 797 for maximum peak brightness. And let's say the 530 is over here. But because we are expanding that 530, now that 530 is the equivalent of that 797. So that is a beautiful thing to play SDR games, because now by maxing out that SDR HDR slider in Windows, when we turn on HDR, by maxing that out, the game and the content is going to call for the same. So about the same 500 nits is going to give you the maximum peak brightness of this LGC1, which is like 800 nits. So if you have a pattern like the HDR Windows calibration, you can use that pattern, and you will realize that when you force the TV to limited, the pattern is going to clip at about 530, actually at 530. So that is awesome. So to do double limited, you don't want to expand that signal completely again. You only want to get rid of the picture being washed out. You only want to lower the black level. You only want to expand the lower end of the grayscale. And you might think, okay, but how can you expand it completely again if you are already forcing limited on the TV? And the way to do that is on the service menu. It's called sub BC, so brightness and contrast. So that allows you to do a second expansion. But on my testings, I find out that it is better not to do that, and it is better just to expand the lower end. So this person that explained me this information, he has a different TV. So what he did, it was to break this down for me so I can understand it, and I am able to apply that knowledge to what I have, because he has a different TV. He cannot tell me, oh, just copy the settings. That's why I am explaining you how this works. So if you have a different display, a different TV, you know what to do with this information. Me telling you on my LGC1, these are the settings, have a good day, that's going to help only the people who have the LGC1. Okay? So that's why this is so important. I'm basically trying to do the same thing that he did in a shorter period of time, because it took me 5 hours. We spoke for 5 hours, and after that it took me 5 more hours to put this in writing, so to organize the idea so I can make a video. So what the way to do that second expansion is with that black level. So I lower fine-tune dark areas to -11 and the screen brightness to 49. The reason why I did it in that way, because I could just leave the screen brightness on 50 and lower fine-tune dark areas to -17, or just leave fine-tune dark areas to the default position and lower a screen brightness to 46. Okay, it's the same. It is equivalent to do a screen brightness to 46, fine-tune dark area 0, a screen brightness 49, fine-tune dark areas minus 11, or screen brightness 50, fine-tune dark areas minus 17. Okay, it is equivalent. The reason why I decide to do screen brightness 49, fine-tune dark areas minus 11 is because screen brightness lowers the entire grayscale. Okay, the midtones also, and fine-tune dark area affects only the lower end of the grayscale. So the reason why I wanted to give that brightness one click down is because I observed that I needed to have a little bit less clipping on the highlights. So when you look at the clouds and bright objects, I noticed that it was clipping right there. So I just wanted to lower that a little bit, and the results are beautiful. So you look at the clouds now with HDRG, and there's no clipping. It's just a beautiful thing. It's just amazing. The results are so amazing that I'm like, people need to know this. This is incredible. So this is a lot. I understand this was a lot. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to have the settings on the description of the video. You don't want to use this and play SDR every single game. It looks so good that you're probably gonna want to do it. But I would strongly recommend you use this knowledge to identify where is the game information. So what I'm going to do before I end the video, because I told you I was going to explain you that, I'm going to explain you how can you figure out where is the game information. No matter what, no matter if you're an SDR, HDR, auto HDR from Windows, non-HDR supported games, where is the game information? We are going to start by opening the game, having the brightness or if it's HDR, you need to set up the sliders properly. So we need to start from the smallest range. So we are going to start by double limiting. So full on the GPU, limited on the TV, and lowering the black level with fine-tuned dark areas and black level. So we're going to start there. If we see, okay, there's no way I can get the shadow details back. I'm just crushing blacks too much. There's no way. I can increase the game brightness. It's not helping. Then you have to get rid of one of the limited. So you raise that black level back to 50, fine-tune dark areas to 0, and see how that looks. Most likely, that's gonna be the setting, okay? And if you have that, if you have limited on the TV, you have to set the peak brightness of your games to about 530, okay? So sometimes you have from 500 to 600, then you're gonna have to do 600, okay? Or maybe 500 depending on the game. You have to also look at the game, see how it looks. So that most likely is going to fix the issue. Now, if that's still too dark and we find that game, like I've seen them, and I'm going to put examples, like games I open, they are full range, I have absolutely no problem, I don't have to force limited on the TV, I don't have to do anything. Then just set the slider on the game 800, no problem, this is just perfect. And we can also, instead of forcing limited on the TV, we can also, with these native HDR games, we can just open them, set the maximum peak brightness of the game to 800, and just limit the black level one time. Just limit the black level one time and see if it's visible. It should be for most games. Like I opened Red Dead Redemption, for example, that's the way to go. Just lower, fine-tune dark areas minus 17. It would be the setting for that. I'm gonna have a summary of all the settings on the description. So you open that native HDR games, you try fine-tune dark areas minus 17, and if that looks awesome, that looks like wow, the picture is no longer washed out like is the case with Red Dead Redemption, it's just amazing. That's why the game is HDR, but it is limited inside that HDR container, okay? So that's how you do it. You test it, you start from the inside, and you go double limited, too dark, one limited, oh maybe, let me try to set the settings, oh no, there's no way I can get the brightness of the highlights are clipping at 600 too much. So I would need to set it to 500. 500 is not bright enough because it's right there. I'm just gonna limit the black level and set the peak brightness to 800. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, that's all I can do.